The 2024 QB draft class is loaded. And on today's episode of the Regression to the Mean podcast, we're going to rank the top 10 QBs in this draft class, going tier by tier to share guys we're excited about and guys we're not that excited about. I'm your host, Shaun Moran, and I am joined by my co-hosts, my good friends, and my fellow knowers of ball, Keegan Thompson and Aidan Holler. Keegan, how we living, man?
I'm good. I'm super thrilled to talk about Bo Nix today. So
Bo Nix and McCarthy, the two things that get Keegan Thompson out of bed in the morning. Aidan, this is a pretty pertinent episode to you, talking QBs. The Bears have the number one pick. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I dusted out the hat. I dusted out the winter hat. It's pretty rainy and cold here in San Diego, California, and we're talking QBs, which is right down my alley at the moment. So excited to get into some of the heavy hitters and some of the guys at the bottom too. So we've got a fun show in store today.
I'm excited for today's episode. We're going through the top 10 QBs of the 2024 draft class, broken them into tiers. I'm going to go through my rankings. I'm going to stop at each tier. These guys are going to give their thoughts on some of these prospects, and we're just going to kind of dive into some of the questions around these guys. As always, we are looking at these rankings from a fantasy football perspective, and I'm taking an approach from a dynasty perspective. So that's how I'm going to look at these rankings, not necessarily how good are these guys at quarterback, but how well are they going to be able to score fantasy points in the NFL. But before we dive in, if you are a part of the 70% of people who are watching this video and have not yet subscribed to the Regression to the Mean podcast, go ahead, hit that subscribe button, like this video, turn on the notifications. You don't want to miss any of the content we are dropping on this channel weekly through the off season. All right, boys, we ready to dive in?
Let's get after it.
All right, tier one. Two guys in tier one. At QB1, I've got Caleb Williams out of USC. And at QB2, I have Drake Maye out of North Carolina. Keegan, when you're looking at Caleb Williams and Drake Maye, what are the first thing that comes to mind with these prospects from like a fantasy perspective?
the normal things you expect out of a quarterback, like what you would get from somebody playing the quarterback position, like both of them have done that at an extremely high level. These guys can put up points. They can score touchdowns. I think both of them have great upside as a rushing quarterback as well, too. I'm not saying that Drake Maye is, somebody that's going to be running the ball 15 times a game, but you can get him going in, some RPO game. You can get him on design runs. Drake Maye was actually pretty good as a runner in college, especially in the red zone too. So that's something that I think can help. And obviously when you watch Caleb, it's Patrick Mahomesy, it's Kyler Murray-esque, it's, escaping the pocket, can create something out of nothing. I think both of those two have insane upside at the QB
I think
position.
It's really important to call this out with these two prospects. They're both 21 years old, and they both had absolutely bonkers sophomore seasons. Caleb Williams, as a true sophomore at USC, threw 42 passing touchdowns, 4,500 passing yards. He had 10 rushing touchdowns and 382 rush yards. Drake Maye is a sophomore, 4,321 pass yards, 38 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 700 rush yards, 7 TDs. Both guys were absolute lights out. Coming to their junior year, they were not as good from a statistical perspective. Caleb in particular looked a little overwhelmed within the structure of their offense, would bail from clean pockets. His pressure to sack ratio jumped from 16% to 21%. But I think at the end of the day, these guys' seasons statistically were totally fine, but we're just comparing them against their otherworldly sophomore breakouts. Aidan, I know you're studying these top two pretty closely as a Bears fan. Is there a lean that you have with Caleb? I'm curious to know your thoughts on
I think with Caleb, what it comes down to is the arm strength and the ability to create something out of nothing. Like, you look at the throws he's able to make and like the arm slots he's able to throw them out of, and it's super unique. There's only a couple of QBs in the NFL that are making, some of the throws that you see in Caleb's film, which again is just silly. I know you mentioned like the sack rate going up. I think because of USC's defense, I think he kind of tried to be Superman, especially in the second half of the season.
Doing too much.
Doing too much. There was just way too much pressure on him. It felt like it was just like, the weight of Los Angeles was just on this kid's shoulders when he's 20, 21 years old. So I definitely lean Caleb, I think, just from like a pure like special trait. Like he's got those special traits. Whereas I think of Drake May and I'm like, that's my stereotypical quarterback. I'm like, he's got the size, he's taller, he's got a couple inches on him, still very quick, very mobile, awesome pocket passer, can make any throw as well, but it's way more in structure. Whereas Caleb's going to give you a bit of both. So I definitely lean Caleb. I'd be shocked if come late April here, the Bears aren't calling his name at 1-1, but we'll see. We've still got the combine. We've still got a lot of offseason talks. So we'll see. These are two special guys, though. Either one, if they weren't in the same class as each other, would be 1-1 pretty much any other year but now, which is fun. We got them both.
Shaun, I know you mentioned like really quickly how young these guys are, because we'll talk about the age of some of these other quarterbacks behind this. But obviously we know how Caleb's career started, taking over for Spencer Rattler in the middle of a game for Oklahoma and immediately takes off, goes with Lincoln to USC, has been good since he entered in to the collegiate level of football. And, Drake May as well, too. He started 14 games his redshirt freshman year in 2022, was the ACC Player of the Year, Offensive Player of the Year, Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year. He's the only the second player in ACC history to do that and sweep all four categories. And the only other player to do that was Jameis Winston. So I said Jameson, and it's Jameis Winston. Please don't come at me.
He's JMO pilled. He's thinking about JMO. He's always thinking about JMO in the back of his head.
But I think the age thing for both of them is such a huge factor. They're both young. They broke out really early. Like they can do everything that you would want out of a QB prospect. So I think 1 and 2 for them is exactly how it should go. Caleb to the Bears, Washington take Drake.
Yeah, and Drake May was PFF's number 1 rated QB in 2022, and he was the number 4 rated QB in 2023. This guy is the shit. I've watched Drake May now, and I'm all in, and I cannot wait to see Drake May in a potential air raid offense, showing off his mobility and his arm strength in Washington. I think that would be a great pairing. Moving on to the next tier. We talked about 2 21-year-old studs who we think should go at the top 2 of the draft. I have this next tier where it's old but really good, because we have some old but question marks later on coming with other quarterbacks. But in a tier of his own, I've got the LSU quarterback, Jayden Daniels, the 5-year super senior, who made a truly mind-boggling leap in efficiency across like all metrics in from his 4th to 5th year in college. I'll open up the floor here. Keegan, I know that you had some thoughts on Jayden and his age, but we can't deny what he did last year was just not absolutely 10 out of 10 special as both a passer and a rusher. I'm curious to know how you weigh his age in his final year of production and what that translates to you in fantasy next season.
Yeah, it's a little weird because like on the side, I was texting you, Shaun, about, like if I'm going to be harsh on Bo Nix about his age, like should I be harsh to Jayden Daniels about his age too? One of those seasons was a very shortened season to COVID, like 2019, then going to 2020, COVID shortened season, kind of messed up his whole rhythm from 19 to 2021. I can't sit there and be like, it's a wash, but like he was a very good freshman at Arizona State. And then he had some murky years, but it's really hard to turn a blind eye to what he did in 2023, like from the production, because one, he wins the Heisman Trophy, right? But throws for 3,800 yards in the air, 1,100 yards on the ground, 50 total touchdowns, only 4 interceptions. Led the country in total yards per game with 412. Led the country in yards per play, 10.7. I think the thing with Jayden Daniels that I keep coming back to that I can't say about some of these other prospects, like especially after him at the age, is he's a really good deep ball passer. And he's like willing to throw deep and attack kind of the edge of the field, the outside, but just throw the ball like deep in general. He had 27 big time throws, which was tied for 4th in the FBS. And he had 22 touchdowns, which was 1st in that, with only 1 turnover worthy play on passes of 20 plus yards.
That is
so. Not only is he an insane athlete, and I think a lot of people will talk about his rushing upside and kind of leaving the pocket and stuff, but from a clean pocket, Jayden Daniels posted the FBS best passer rating on the year at 146.2, and he averaged more yards per attempt than anybody else, which is 11.5. And he was good under pressure too, not just that. So it's like he has the insane escapability, he has the insane rushing upside, but he can attack downfield. He's gotten much better as a passer. Like I think the games that he's played in his collegiate career, because he has played 55 games, have helped him. Games. I can't say that it hurts him. So maybe I need to like reapproach how I attack the Bo Nix thing, because people do want experience, especially from the quarterback position. And it's hard to look at 55 games and see that he ended his career on such a high note and call that a bad thing. But he's got a lot of playing history. The end of his career has been fantastic. He's so tantalizing. And like you said at the beginning of the episode, from a fantasy perspective, this is like a dream come true at the quarterback position.
8.4 big time throw percentage and his 1.6 turnover worthy play percentage is very hard to wrap the mind around. The guy was balls to the wall, airing it out, not making mistakes. His yards per attempt jumped from like 9 to 12. His yards per carry jumped from like 4 to 8. It's crazy to see how big of a heater he was in 2023. And I know, Aidan, you're a big backer of Jayden Daniels. Keegan kind of laid out the bull case. Do you think this translates right away in the NFL? Do you think he's system dependent? Do you think this was like a system outcome because he played with great receivers?
I think in terms of fantasy output, like you've got to be licking your chops looking at Jayden Daniels. Like you mentioned, the guy rushed for over 1,100 yards, threw for 3,800. That's nearly 5,000 yards of all-purpose yards.
It's nuts.
50 total touchdowns. Like, if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what does. Like, there's
in the SEC. In the SEC,
yeah, against
too.
like top like there's a very good possibility that this guy gets drafted and outperforms both Caleb and Drake Maye in fantasy because of his rushing output alone. Like, this guy is special with his legs and has only gotten better with his arm, especially over the last 3 seasons. So I know Keegan mentioned like how do we value experience versus age. Like, if we're gonna have a guy that like stayed in college this long, like we want to see progression year over year, and he did exactly that, both passing and rushing. So I'm really excited to see where he goes. Like you alluded to in our first tier, there's a lot of boards that have him as QB2. So I don't know. Does he make his way to Washington? Does New England pass on a QB altogether? I don't know if that roster is ready for a QB.
They could.
I don't know.
They could.
Because then at that point, it's like, is Minnesota trading up? Are the Raiders trading up? Like, that 5 to 8 range
Atlanta.
is like, if a QB slides, someone's picking up the phone and moving up if one of these 3 make it out of there. So no, I'm a huge Jayden guy. Like, you could almost argue he's in that top tier. Like, it's, the sample's a little smaller, but in terms of like the elite level of play, but I don't know. Jayden's a baller, man. The dude just won the Heisman.
The funniest thing about him is his Looney Tunes-esque like runs and hits he takes. It's like Josh Allen without the frame to survive the hits. Like, he's like Wile E. Coyote constantly getting duped by the Roadrunner. It's like insane how many hits he took that just look goofy. They don't even look real.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned Jayden's age and production, and I think that gets us to our next tier. And to recap, we have Caleb Williams and Drake Maye in tier 1, Jayden Daniels in his own tier in tier 2. In tier 3, we have 3 quarterbacks, and I'd say this then makes up the top 6 in this draft. I have Bo Nix at 4, J.J. McCarthy at 5, and Michael Penix at 6. So what's really fascinating is everything that we laid out for Jayden Daniels from a statistic perspective, Bo Nix and Michael Penix are like basically there. I mean, what Bo Nix did last season, it's kind of jaw-dropping. The guy threw for 4,500 yards, 45 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He averaged 11.2 yards per attempt, and he scored 6 rushing touchdowns. I mean, kind of crazy. But if you dig into the numbers, the guy did not throw the ball downfield or make big-time throws. But at the same time, he wasn't sacked. His pressure to sack rate was 1%, and he was really safe with the ball in his turnover-worthy play percentage. So I think someone like Bo Nix is not in that Jayden Daniels tier, where Jayden Daniels might be a one-man offense at his ceiling, right? Where Bo Nix might just be an effective offensive orchestrator, point guard, maybe a system quarterback. His comps, when I run them in RotoViz, they look pretty similar to like Kenny Pickett, which is a bummer because of his height, his age, and his production. He also comps out pretty fair to Andy Dalton, too, who carved out a really good career as a second-round draft pick. Then you have Michael Penix, who is Keegan's guy. So Keegan, Michael Penix versus Bo Nix, Michael Penix versus Jayden Daniels. What's the deal? How do we approach these olds?
Yeah, for me, my order personally would be Penix at 4. I think he's the 4th best quarterback in this draft. And then JJ Bo, I have after him. Who of those two I have over, I'm not entirely sure. The thing that I have with Michael Penix, and we talked about this early on our QB episodes that we already covered some of the Dynasty stuff, but the thing with Michael Penix is he has a huge injury history, and that is definitely a problem at the NFL level. But I can go back and look at Penix and see some seasons and have some like kind of bright moments in Indiana, like led them to some of their best seasons before getting injured. Like the production was there at a very like, I'm not going to call Indiana a bad program, but one of the lesser Power 5 programs you could probably want to play for at the time. And they've been atrocious in the past. And Michael Penix was like the one bright spot. The injuries are awful, but you know, he would go on transfer to UW and he would end up starting 28 games, throws for almost a little bit over 9,000 yards, throws for 67 touchdowns, only 19 interceptions. The thing that separates him from the top three guys fantasy wise is Michael Penix has a better arm than JJ and Bo Nix.
Yes.
Like effortlessly throws lasers. You know, there's a lot of talk of like, you know, downfield handoffs, like people who have great touch on a deep ball. Like that is very much Michael Penix. Only 20 turnover worthy plays on 1,100 pass attempts in his Washington career. That's a 1.8% turnover worthy throw rate. Also great under pressure, 7.6% pressure to sack rate. He's also got the big game experience, like we'll talk about with JJ McCarthy, you know, playing in a national championship game. He also is willing to throw under pressure because he's not somebody who's looking to escape the pocket all the time. He wants to use his arm and that lefty kind of like arm movements, and he's got the unorthodox sidearm, but he can flick it from any area of the pocket, outside of the pocket. I just think he has the best arm. Maybe his biggest knock that people will say is not attacking the middle of the field. But for me, he's the best thrower of the football between these three.
Sideline to sideline thrower. He can access all areas of the field. Not mobile at all, but the pressure to sack stuff's good. So he's able to get rid of the ball and avoid mistakes, but his lack of mobility is concerning. His injury history and the fact that he can't really move.
He's Geno Smith.
A little bit. He's a little bit like Geno. He's a little bit like Kirk Cousins, honestly, like very good comps. He's kind of like Tua because he's a lefty in my mind and he's not mobile, but I think you could drop Michael Penix in a good offense, and I think the offense would be good.
For sure.
So I would not be shocked if he is good at the NFL. At the same time, though, he could go in and just physically be smaller, struggle with the speed of NFL defenses, and just struggle with just general lack of mobility. Bo Nix or Michael Penix, Aidan? Who are you taking?
So we all have different orders here. I've got Bo Nix at 4. I've got Penix at 5. And I've got JJ at 6. I think Bo Nix is like all of the best things about those two guys. He's got a ton of experience, like we've already talked about on the show, like only got better and better. This last year, his 5th year, was absolutely outrageous. I still think he possesses a ton of mobility and really no injury history that kind of Penix has. So JJ's the best athlete, I think, out of these three. Penix has the best arm, but I think Bo Nix kind of gives you like the best of both worlds with those guys in terms of like things you like in both of them. I don't know. I have trouble talking myself into JJ McCarthy. I just think like if he was such like,
are we doing the JJ combo? Is it time to do it?
My big thing on JJ is like, I just don't think he was asked to do very much, sat behind an absolute brick wall and has very little experience. And we're talking about mocking him in the top 10. That's insane to me. Like there's not enough tape for like my appetite to be that rich for JJ McCarthy in the top 10, let alone really the first round. So it's Bo Nix, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy for me. But it's hard, you know, that like this tier is going to be Baskin Robbins, like with everyone you ask.
For some other like Bo Nix stuff, just, you know, peeling back a little bit of his production, and he played well, but he threw to a lot of open guys at Oregon. Like that's just the fact. Screens accounted for 22% of his passes in 2023. 8th highest rate among quarterbacks with 200 dropbacks. He also had the low ADOT, which, you know, we talk about with Penix. He can grip it and rip it, throw it as far as you want him. But he had a 6.8 ADOT in 2023, which is 122nd out of 125 passers with 200 plus dropbacks. He threw deep, which is 20 plus yards on just 10% of his throws last year. One of the lowest deep ball rates in college football. That's 122nd out of 132 quarterbacks with at least 25 passes of such depth. So yes, he's a good quarterback in a good system. Yes, he played in a very QB-friendly system at Oregon. He has some good rushing upside. but this guy has the most experience of anybody in
I think ever.
this class. I mean, he's 61
Ever.
starts over 5
I think
seasons,
he has the most
which is
experience
the most in
ever.
college
I
football.
think he's got the most experience ever. I think
through 1,900 passes, through 1,500 passing yards, 113 touchdowns. I mean, 1,600 rushing yards and 38 scores on the ground. Experience. I feel like GMs will appreciate that more than it will hinder
He just shouldn't
him.
be a high draft pick in the first round, but if someone takes him at the end of the first round or takes him in the second round, I think it's a good pick.
Yeah.
I think too with Bo Nix, a lot of people have pointed out to his production at Auburn as a 19-year-old in the SEC. He had 2,500 pass yards, 16 touchdowns, 6 INTs, and then he also rushed for 7 touchdowns. So he had 23 touchdowns.
He had a great win in the Iron Bowl that year.
He was good
too.
as a freshman.
They went 9-4. He beats Alabama in the Iron Bowl.
He was good as a freshman, pretty bad his second and third years, and then just otherworldly at Oregon in a very, very QB-friendly system. So we'll see how that plays out. I think we have to have the JJ McCarthy conversation because JJ is someone that is just screaming up draft boards. I'd say he has the most buzz. I have no idea if this comes to fruition or not, but a lot of tapped in NFL draft experts are saying JJ is going to be a top 12 pick. My thoughts on JJ are pretty simple. Early declare, national championship, true winner, right? All those fucking tried and true cliches.
All that crap.
27-1 as a starter.
What I will say is he wasn't asked to do much at Michigan. If someone takes him in the first round because he has a lot of traits, like he has some really nice reps on tape where his arm looks great, where his mobility is showing it off, where he's making difficult throws. He also has some really weird tape where he has a really high turnover worthy throw percentage and a low big time throw rate. And he's like, what are you doing? He had a couple what are you doing throws per game. People are comping him a little bit to like Brock Purdy in the sense where you drop him in a good system and he could produce really well. I just would not start this guy right away. And I feel a little reluctant pinning the franchise to JJ McCarthy. He just seems like the quarterback.
I think that's a good
people
point.
Fired. I honestly
he kind of
got that vibe.
And you know what? I feel like the first round steam is bad for JJ McCarthy. Like personally, like I agree that honestly, Nix, McCarthy, possibly Penix, even though I know those guys are older, those two, not JJ, should not be starters this year. Like Caleb, Drake, and Jayden can all start. But I feel like starting JJ, spending a bunch of high draft capital could really screw his career. You know, it's not like the people who are picking high in the draft that are taking quarterbacks are the most well-run teams. You know, they're picking early for a reason. So give him a year to sit behind somebody and maybe take over the reins.
I like ATL as a landing spot for him because of the Zach Robinson, Sean McVay connection, and he seems like a guy who could run a McVay offense. I would not hate it if he ended up with Sean Payton either, because Sean Payton's had shown a propensity to get the most out of quarterbacks. So I like those two spots for JJ. Throw him in like Minnesota, even though they have good pass catchers, but like a lot of expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not a bad environment to throw to Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. I don't know.
I think Minnesota's a great landing spot for these three quarterbacks right here. Like you get to sit behind Kirk and hang out, and then you get to inherit some insanely good weapons.
I think Bo Nix and Penix could play.
I do too.
More for, not maybe not well, but they could play day one compared to JJ McCarthy. Like JJ is still just so raw. I don't think there's any chance he even declares if Harbaugh's still there. Like I think this is just a matter of like stock will never be higher. So it's like, fuck it, we're going.
Here's a good one. Let's take the fourth quarterback because the first three quarterbacks in last draft were pretty consensus, and we knew they were going to play. Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Bryce Young. Fourth quarterback, Will Levis. Where would you rank Will Levis amongst these three quarterbacks? Because he ended up starting a lot of games for Tennessee this year. That wasn't their plan, but it ended up happening due to injuries and everything. But where would you take these guys compared to Will Levis? Because Will Levis played and had some
QB7 probably.
Yeah, like I'm putting him around JJ, who I have at 6.
Yeah, QB7.
I'd way rather have Bo Nix. I'd way rather have Penix. Him and JJ would be pretty similar evals. But I think like there was more tape on Levis. Like he felt more pro ready in my opinion. I don't know. That's a good question.
Athlete.
Yeah.
He had the athleticism, right? So it's like, it depends how these guys test.
Yeah.
Will Levis tested really well at the combine.
Yeah, the combine's going to be huge for these guys.
The
it always
huge
is.
for JJ. Pro day, you're going to see JJ have again, Zach Wilson is just a screaming JJ comp to me. Whether or not that's a good or bad thing is like, maybe if Zach Wilson sat for 2 years, he would have been really good. So I don't know.
I think that comp, I joke about it and I said it too. I feel like the comp is like a little bit lazy though, because JJ doesn't have the arm that Zach Wilson does.
Wilson was awesome at BYU too.
This is revisionist history. Their underlying statistics are pretty similar in terms of like average yards per attempt, pass yards per game. And then JJ did it in Michigan, at Power 5 against some of the best defenses in the world, where Zach was doing it with an elite offensive line against like San Jose State.
Yeah.
So
he's just going to have question marks on his arm. That's all. And it's going to be like, well, why didn't
he has a good arm?
He does have a good arm. He just didn't use it much.
It's his decision making. He makes terrible decisions.
Everything's over the middle too. He's not like Penix is true sideline to sideline. Bo Nix is more like JJ was very like in between the hashes. Like what is right in front of you? Whereas it's like he's not.
That might have been.
He's not throwing a 30-yard corner route. It's like it's different, and maybe he can, but what they were asking him to do makes it very hard to judge him. And it's either going to make someone or it's going to get someone fired. Like the GM that drafts him is in like a pretty tricky spot, especially if your plan is like, we got to start him right away because I drafted him in the first round. So
would not start him. Moving on to the next tier, guys. We just have 4. We don't have a ton of notes on them, but I thought it'd be important to rank them. At number 7, I've got Spencer Rattler. Number 8, Sam Hartman. Number 9, Michael Pratt. Number 10, Jack Plummer, son of Jake Plummer. Spencer Rattler reminds me of Sam Howell. He's just doing stuff out there. He's just making throws, throwing picks, getting sacked, throwing dimes. I don't know if he'll be good, but he may be fun. So Spencer Rattler's an interesting guy.
He's the last name on this list that has a chance to start in the NFL. Like I cannot look at the list seriously and say Sam Hartman is just going to be the most handsome backup in the NFL.
I like Sam Hartman.
You like him because he's handsome.
I like Hartman. Hartman's kind of good, dude.
Because he has a fantastic beard.
Like Rattler could start in the NFL to me, and I think Hartman is maybe like spot start backup here and there. Like maybe he has a Case Keenum season in him. I don't know about that even, but like the rest of these guys are career backups. But Rattler could start, given an opportunity.
I think Pratt could potentially start too. Ton of experience at Tulane. I get a ton of Brock Purdy from him. It's like kind of undersized, no elite traits, but like really good anticipation, doesn't turn the ball over. Teammates absolutely love him. I like Michael. I've got Michael Pratt at 8 behind Spencer Rattler as my QB8 personally. But I think after that, I'm kind of with Keegan with the backups.
Pratt comps really similarly to Desmond Ridder out of Cincinnati. So I'm not saying like Desmond Ridder, the guy who throws picks all the time in the red zone, but Desmond Ridder was a decent prospect coming out of Cincinnati. That's what Pratt comps to. Hartman reminds me of Jake Browning a bit, like 4-year Power 5 starter who had some good moments. I think Hartman's interesting. He's really good in the pocket. He's relatively aggressive downfield. Doesn't make a ton of mistakes. He just doesn't really have physical.
Seems like a good vibes guy
of like an NFL quarterback. Yeah.
I'd love to have
he's
a
probably going
to
correct.
Like I'd love to have a beer with him.
Yeah. My fiance goes nowhere near him.
Yeah.
But yes,
Cannot be the same.
Sweetheart, get out of the room. I'm watching Sam Hartman highlights.
Nope. Yeah. No, thank you, Hannah. Please leave. Any other guys that I'm missing here and honorable mentions before we get out of here?
Yeah, I want to hit Joe MIlton real fast, just because of like the size and skill. Like the dude is 6'5", 235. Probably the strongest arm out of anyone on this list, out of maybe not named Caleb Williams. But just a very like there's just a lot of bad with him. One, he's the same recruiting class as Trevor Lawrence. Two, like everything is very like first read or bust with him. Like he's consistently getting tricked into like pretty basic coverages and turning the ball over. But in terms of the size and like the skills, he's like if there's a lottery ticket at the bottom, in the 9 to 15 range of QBs, it's MIlton. I just don't know if it'll ever work out for him.
He's similar to Will Levis. He comps pretty similarly to Levis. This class is stacked, man.
It's a good
there's
QB
probably
class.
Gonna have 3 or 4 starters in this class,
and a handful of backups that probably hang around for a bit. We're gonna have a couple like Colt McCoys from.
Before we get out of here, who's your favorite prospect in the draft?
I'm planting a flag in Penix the way I did with Stroud last year. I'm just like I'm making that my bet. but I feel like Caleb, I don't want to say, but I really like Drake May. He kind of reminds me of like Josh Allen a little bit.
Deshaun Watson's my comp for Drake May.
I get Herbert from him. Personally.
All really good names.
Those are all pretty cool. Minus really Watson's off the field issues.
Antics.
Those are all guys you want to be associated with.
Pre-2021 Watson.
Yeah. Houston.
Caleb's your guy.
Aidan? Caleb's my guy. Caleb is going to be my QB. So yeah, I'm firmly planting it.
When are you buying the jersey?
Once I get his jersey number. Once I know it
10?
is.
He wears 10. No, he wears 13. He's got Purdy's number.
There's rumors he's going to wear 0. We'll see. 13's
bad. I really hope not.
13's bad luck.
Aidan is going to have the craziest jersey photo.
13's bad luck. So I heard there's rumors he might be the first QB to wear 0, which would be pretty fucking hilarious. But
I wouldn't.
No, maybe he just wears 1 and I just toss some duct tape over Fields and I don't have to buy a new one.
Him? No. All right, well,
you could also toss duct tape on the 0 for
10 guys.
Your Trubisky jersey too.
Are you going to buy your 3rd jersey? Oh wow!
I won't quit.
All right,
I won't quit.
All right, boys. I appreciate you for always hopping on and talking ball. This is a great QB class. We are going to be following this up with running backs and wide receivers next week. It's going to be highly contentious talking about Blake Corum, but I'm excited to duel Keegan. Thank you everybody for tuning in as always. And we'll see you next time.